Our next speaker is Helen from an extraordinary organisation called Let Our Kids Be Kids. I can't remember when you first was set up, but you can tell us and give us your thoughts. Thanks, Helen.
Hi everyone. Yeah, we started back in 2016, and really our focus is against the accountability system in schools. We know that we need some sort of accountability in schools, but we don't need it to be linked to assessment, which just destroys the curriculum. I know everyone said so many wonderful things, and I'm not going to repeat that, but the thing that keeps coming to me is the concept of Pandora's box, and this is what's giving me a lot of hope at the moment. So 2 years ago, I opened Pandora's box myself within my family and took the kids out of school because I was so pissed off with everything that was happening, excuse my French, that I couldn't let my kids go through it anymore. So we took them out of school, homeschooled them, talk about white middle class privilege. That's this all over, but that's what we did. And as a result, the kids experienced 2 years of democratic child-led learning. And it felt to me very much that as soon as COVID hit, that's what kids, some kids, not all kids, kids all over the country, all over the world were able to experience what we had had the benefit of experiencing for a couple of years. And I just really hope that that Pandora's box has been opened for people so that finally we see that children need to be the centre of learning. And learning is more than just English and maths. We are learning through cookery, we are learning through plumbing, we're learning through YouTube, and that's okay. We live in a completely different society now, and I'm really hoping that we wake up to that. My pessimism is that I have been saying this since 2016, and we've all been saying this for a long time. And how loudly do we need to shout, and what do we need to do? If one more bit of research gets done on this, I'm going to scream, because we don't need any more research. We know this, and now we need some action to go with it and for it actually to happen. And Elaine, I completely hear what you're saying about this needing to come from parents. The thing that we've learned through parental campaigning is parents need to be told what to do by teachers, and in particular head teachers, because they have this ingrained fear from the education system itself that they have to do what teachers and head teachers tell them to do, or what their children's going to be punished in school or something. They don't know what they think is going to happen. So it's all very well as us as parents saying these things, but the narrative that keeps coming back is, I don't want to upset my school, I don't want to upset my teacher. So we need very much, and this is where I think More Than a Score is working so hard to get head teachers on board, because without those head teachers saying, come on, this is what we need you to do, it's very, very difficult for parents to stand up against things and try and make a change. We absolutely need to get rid of baseline. And the thing that I think that parents don't understand is how that's propping up the whole system. So the test in itself, if the teacher delivers it really well, the parents can argue it's not that big a deal, but it's the fact that it's propping up this whole system that I think we need to get the message out about. What else? Yeah, so I'm not going to repeat things that everybody else has already said. Pandora's box has been opened in terms of it not just being about English and maths, about the value of the early years, about play-based learning, about how wonderful teachers are and the amazing job that they do. But we just need to have some action linked to it rather than just more talking about it, because nothing will get done. I'm fearful that what they're going to do is squeeze exactly the same system that we've always had just into a smaller box, and it'll get even harder for teachers and even harder for children to meet the standards. So I'd love to have some optimism. Please give me some optimism to finish this meeting with. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Helen. That was brilliant. Lots of food for thought there about what we do next. Our final speaker, and I'm sorry it's taken so long, but there's been so many interesting voices to hear, is a parent and a teacher, an SEND teacher, a vastly experienced SEND teacher, Lucy Cox from Brent in North West London. Lucy.
Can everybody hear me? Sorry, I'm just going to apologise because my voice is a bit ropey. I'm just getting over COVID. I just went back to work a couple of weeks ago, so I'm still a little bit like not 100%. But really, what I'd like to, and I'm not going to be hugely optimistic, I'm afraid. I'm kind of am, but I kind of not. I'm really with Zara on the whole thing about pessimism of the intellect, but optimism of the will, because I think one of the things, we've very much seen the way that systematic racism operates in this society throughout this pandemic. It's really starting to burst open, isn't it, in a way that where Black people are actually leading a movement to challenge not just violence, but the way that systematic racism infiltrates right the way through our whole society. And I think that's something that's also true around disability. Although we don't, hasn't had that light shown on it in the same way, partly because it's much more difficult for disabled people to campaign. I mean, for instance, I can give you a few examples of the way that this has been, the way that the COVID crisis has made this so utterly sharp, right? For instance, CQC research has just been recently released.
Sound's gone. Is Lucy frozen for everybody else? Because she's frozen for me.
No. Can you hear me? Can you still hear me? Rubbish Wi-Fi.
Vicky.
I can hear Lucy okay. I can see Lucy okay.
Okay, I'll carry on. Okay, so CQC, the Care Quality Commission research into care home deaths, and we think about care home deaths as elderly people, don't we? But actually, care homes between the 10th of April and the 16th of May, there were 386 deaths, people with learning disabilities and autism, and that's a rise of 134% on normal years. So actually, the COVID crisis has been a huge crisis for disabled people. We also see that in schools in lots of ways. So for instance, risk assessments, right? Anybody who's a teacher has got risk assessments like coming out their ears, haven't we? Risk assessments exclude children with SEN almost on a blanket basis from mainstream schools because most children with SEN don't understand about how to socially distance. But and all of this is happening, in the context of much longer term health inequalities for people, particularly people with autism. For people with autism, their life expectancy is 54 years compared to an average of 70 in the control group. So just like racism is, an absolute cancer virus in our society, so is disability discrimination. And so-called, I don't like this language, but low-functioning women with autism are 9 times more likely to die than their neurotypical sisters. In education, we all know there is a massive shortage of special school places in probably every local authority. And the systematic underfunding of mainstream schools has led to heads making decisions to cut what seems to be, the easiest things to cut are often the staff that work most closely with children with special needs. And that leads to 2 things. One is parents being encouraged to homeschool or off-roll their children, which Zara knows a lot about because she works against exclusion. It's basically a form of illegal exclusion. And the other thing that's happened a lot is that parents who are a bit more savvy, the ones like me that are good at going on Facebook and Googling and stuff, are applying for educational health and care plans for their children because it's the only way they can secure the funding in school to get the children the support they need, which means that the higher needs budget is massively overstretched in every local authority. Okay, so that's the kind of context that we're in. It's a very, very serious crisis, and it has been for some time. COVID has just sharpened that. But I think the thing that we've, I'm going to massively agree with Elaine about is this is a moment where things can really change, but we need to move sharply. And I think, my model in thinking about this is Marcus Rashford, right? That young man, 22 years old, just wasn't going to lie down and take it. Politicians aren't doing this, he's going to do it himself, along with obviously other people. He wasn't alone, but because he was chiming with what we all know about the hypocrisy of what the government are saying about disadvantaged children. On one hand, they're trying to use them to beat us back into schools, they're using it to make teachers look bad, but on the other, won't even feed them. It absolutely chimed with really, really large numbers of people. And I think we can make the same argument around the curriculum. Our children, we don't have a deficit model for children with SEN, children who are working class, Black children they're not a deficit, it's not a problem. These children are brilliant kids, but what they've got is a curriculum that doesn't meet their needs in any shape or form. It's an exam factory, and nobody flourishes in an exam factory, but particularly not children who come from those backgrounds. So now's our time to all be a little bit of Marcus Rashford, and all be a little bit about, we're taking back control of this. You know, I wish I could play football like him, right? But, you know, but take back control of this. So the curriculum doesn't belong to the government. The schools don't belong to the government. Schools belong to children, they belong to parents, they belong to teachers, and they belong to the wider community. And that's who they should be serving. We should be preparing our children to go out into a world where they're going to battle climate change, you know, get rid of racism from our society, get rid of the discrimination against people with disabilities, and actually build a better world. And that's what our education should be predicated on, not getting through the next bloody test, whether you're 4 years old or 18 years old. And I'm going to leave it there. And I think we should agree now that we're all going to meet up again and actually, you know, put out a statement, meet up again and make some concrete plans about exactly how we're going to do that step by step.